All right, welcome back to JPCE Spiritual Talk. It's Jared Campbell. So last night, I did not do a video on Ukraine, right? So I'm going to do a really quick one, a really quick update, right? This video shouldn't be too long, but it's going to be kind of quick because this evening we're going to talk more about it. Hopefully this evening, right? There's a lot going on, right? So my evenings, it just depends, right? That's why I say I may or may not. But since I didn't do one last night, this is going to be a quick one, right? I'm just going to highlight some things that are going on in Ukraine for those of you that are subscribing and you're interested in what's going on in Ukraine. So here's a quick video, right? So this one, these two are very quick. We're just going to talk about what I have seen and heard what's going on in Ukraine from both Russia and Ukraine, right? Yeah, remember these perspectives and this news is coming from international sources, right? So I'm just reading what they put down, right? I know that here we're not getting a whole lot, right? I know that our mainstream media is not really reporting on some of this. So we take the information that we have and we do the best we can, right? That's what I always say. All right, so first thing I want to talk about. So right now, what's going on in Ukraine? Like right now, all right? Ukraine is staging this massive counteroffensive, right? So it's going to be a massive, right? It's going to be probably the biggest one they've done, right? So one of the headlines is General Ukrainian attack, including 6 brigades, right? 6 brigades and masses of mercenaries, right? So they're calling them mercenaries, right? Are they mercenaries? They could be. Could they be NATO? Could they be part of NATO and have taken off military insignia, right? Could be. I don't know, right? But that's what it's saying. They're getting ready to stage this massive counteroffensive, right? So they have mercenaries that are joining them. They're getting 6 brigades together, and they're trying to save the Kupiansk-Seversk, if I said that right, right? The Russians have also crossed the Oskol River and Kharkiv, right? Kharkiv. So the Russians have already crossed the Oskol River and Kharkiv, right? So what we have going on is the biggest Ukrainian counter-offensive to date is underway, right? This is the largest Ukrainian operation aimed at recapturing, right, lost ground and pushing the Russians away from the Kupyansk-Liman and Seversk, right? If I said those right. And the situation is considered critical for the Ukrainians, okay? And so that is a quick update there, right? So there's a massive counteroffensive that's underway, right? Now I found another article from War 24/7 News, right? It's talking about coming out of Ukraine, right? It says Russia lost over 500 soldiers in one day on the battlefield. Let's read this article, right? It says, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine announced today that Russia has lost 228,870 troops. Wow. In Ukraine since the start of the full-scale invasion that took place February of 2022. Especially within one day, the Russian army lost over 530 soldiers and 26 tactical UAVs. That's what Ukraine is claiming, right? Remember, that's what Ukraine is claiming. I'm just sharing the information. It says, according to the General Staff report, Russia has also lost over 4,042 tanks, 7,868 armored fighting vehicles, 6,794 vehicles and fuel tanks, 4,162 artillery systems, 632 multiple launch missile systems, 389 air defense systems, 315 planes, 308 helicopters, 3,545 tactical UAVs, while over 1,200 Russian cruise missiles have been shot down. Yesterday, Ukraine said its military was making progress in all directions. While the head of the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, stressed that the Ukrainian counteroffensive was slow, but making small and steady progress. Okay? Here's a tweet, right, from the defense of Ukraine. Here's a tweet. It says, if a nation values anything more than freedom, it will lose its freedom. And the irony of it is that if it is comfort or money that it values more, it will lose that too. So the total combat losses of the enemy from February 24th, 2022, right? So on this tweet, it shows everything we just read, right? The person who tweeted this, Somerset Mogam, I think said that. I don't know if I said their name right. I apologize if I got it wrong. Well, I'm not trying to, right? I'm just bringing the information. So those are the two things I really want to quickly cover, right? It's a short video. So Ukraine is massing this counteroffensive, right? It's supposed to be a really, really big counteroffensive, right? They're reporting that Russia has lost a lot since the war started back in February of 2022, right? So I wanted to share those things with you. Now, I've been keeping up with the war in Ukraine since it started in February of 2022. I've watched lots of documentaries on both sides, whether it's pro-Ukrainian to pro-Russian, to get an understanding of what's going on over there. We also know by history that the Russians have no problems throwing bodies, right? They have no problems throwing bodies in war, right? And that's the thing. You know, we can only take in what we're given, right? But I also feel like there's a lot of deception going on in this war as well, right? When I look at some articles and I read and they have all these numbers, and I'm thinking to myself, how do they possibly know how many vehicles they've destroyed? How do you keep count? How do you even know? Right? Most governments have a hard time keeping up with their own accounting, right? They're all going into debt. So how do they know how many vehicles were destroyed? How many know how many people have actually been killed, right? How would we ever really know that when they're still fighting, right? And so I look at these numbers when I report some of this, I'm thinking, believe half of what you read maybe? Have the Russians really lost 228,000 guys? Maybe it's closer to 100,000. Believe half of what you read, right? Have they really lost this much equipment, right? You look at some of these things, it's like, how do they know all this? How do they count it all, right? But that's just it, right? What's happening in Ukraine is very important, and it does affect us here in the U.S., okay? Right? It does affect us. And this is why I'm paying so much more close attention to what's going on in Ukraine, because it will one day affect us. A lot of people over here in America, they think it won't affect them. They think that what's going on is not a big deal, but it is. Each and every day that this war drags on, the more and more the reality that American soldiers will be pushed to fight in Ukraine. NATO will eventually be drawn into this war, right? Mark my words, NATO will be drawn into this war at some point. There's so many things going on. Talked about the other day, right? At the Z nuclear power plant, right? I call it Z because I can't pronounce his name. But there's a lot of things going on there. The Ukrainians are saying that the Russians are going to blow it up, right? Which that would draw NATO into the war because it would be a nuclear catastrophe. Well, the Ukrainians are planning for something. They've already issued potassium iodide to lots of people. Potassium iodide is what you take, right? It's what you take when there's been a nuclear explosion and there's radiation leaking everywhere. So the Ukrainians know something's going to happen. Russian sources say that Ukrainian special forces, along with NATO special forces, will blow it and then blame Russia for it, which would be like a false flag in order to draw NATO into the war. NATO and Ukraine said the Russians will blow it. Well, if Russia blew it, that would then draw NATO into the war. So, does Russia really have any interest to blow a nuclear power plant? I mean, they could. But see, this nuclear power plant situation could draw NATO into this war, no matter what happens. whether the Russians really blow it or it's the Ukrainians. False flag, right? So if NATO gets drawn into this war, it affects all of us, right? That's why I'm reporting more on this. So this is where we're going to end. It's what I know. It's what I've read, right? I have a feeling that NATO will be drawn into this war at some point. I feel like it's going to get worse. And I feel like many people in America are asleep at the wheel. They're not paying attention. Your mainstream media is lying to you, right? It's lying to you. And it's not been truthful. Untruthful deception. Your government is sending billions to Ukraine. Billions to Ukraine. Billions, right? Billions. It's a proxy war. Right? Before I close out, I'm going to ask a simple question, right? What is the difference between the special operations America did in Iraq and Afghanistan versus special operations that Russia wanted to do in Ukraine? What's the difference? Why is America allowed to do certain things but other countries can't? Why are we allowed to do special operations but other countries can't? What gives us the right to meddle with everybody else, right? Just think about that. When we went to Iraq and Afghanistan, nobody meddled with us. I'll just leave it as that. Right? So much confusion. But this is where we're in. Thank you all so much. Like I said, discern for yourself. And I love keeping up what's going on in Ukraine. I love you all so much. In the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. You guys have a blessed day. I'll see you all this evening. Like I said, this is kind of like a makeup video since I didn't do nothing last night. So I love you all so much. And that's what's going on in Ukraine. Have a blessed day.